Okay, our third assignment is still about shape, but now we're adding depth, value, texture, and color. Okay, so there's something called actual space, which is three-dimensional volume that can be emptied or filled with objects. It has width, height, and depth. Space that appears three-dimensional in a two-dimensional surface, like a piece of paper or a painting, is an illusion. That creates a feeling of actual depth. Various techniques can be used to show such visual depth or space. So, sculptors and architects and various craft pieces occupy actual real space. We are aware of actual space in a large room or in an open landscape, for example. If objects or people overlap in a painting, we sense space between them. If overlapping is combined with change in scale, the sense of space is greatly increased. Okay? So linear space is a way of organizing objects in space. One-point perspective is used if the artist is looking along a street or directly at the side of an object. Two-point perspective is used when looking directly at the front corner of a box or a building or even an automobile. Combining two-point perspective with changes in value, which is use of light and shadow, greatly increases the sense of space. So looking at these examples, these are the techniques that are used to show that something has depth, space, or form. Okay, so scale, if we zoom in on this, if we can, you'll see that the objects that are larger are closer to us. And as they get further away, they're smaller. Okay, just like in these rocks. So these rocks are all the same size, but the rocks that are closer to us appear larger and smaller as they go further away. Okay, so that's a sense of scale. Same thing with this building. These are floors in museum, the Guggenheim Museum in New York, and the photographer was standing on the ground floor looking up. And so there's a sense of scale here. This is the floor closest to the photographer, and as they get further away, they get smaller. Okay? Same thing with this middle picture. These are a bunch of pillars. Okay, looks like some kind of walk-through. And you can see that the pillars close to us, they're probably all the same size, but the pillars close to us appear bigger. Okay, so that's change of scale. And then the other one is overlapping. So overlapping is a way to show that something exists in space, and this middle picture is a good example of that. So if you were this person standing in the middle of this structure looking out, you would probably see that these are pillars and they're evenly placed together. But in a 2D surface, they feel, by overlapping them, you get a sense that they're in space. Okay, so that's overlapping. And then perspective. In this middle one, if I were to take my ruler and draw lines, there would be a point where these converge. Okay, so that gives us a sense of space as well by using perspective. Okay, so next there is value. So depending on how you use the value, lights and darks, that it gives a feeling of form or it gives a feeling of space. So in the example of this pineapple, the light source is coming from the right, and because the object has more light areas here, but as it goes back, it's darker. So just by using lights and darks, we get the illusion that something has form. Okay? Same thing with this drawing. If you look at it, it's just these simple values, just dark, a mid value, and a light value. So there's 3 values used to create this. But how they're juxtaposed or put next to one another gives this a feeling that it's not a flat surface, that if I were to rub my hand over it, that it might be bumpy, okay? It's not really, it's flat, it's 2-dimensional, but it gives the illusion that this has some sort of texture to it. Same thing with this image on the bottom here. Even though it's a simpler version of the one top right, this one on the bottom is the same thing. It's just values next to each other, but it gives the illusion that either this object that we read is coming out at us or it's receding, it's going back. Okay? Same thing here with the darks and the lights. This is photography of a building. Obviously there's perspective going on here as well, because these lines are going to converge to some sort of visual point in the distance. But the darks and the lights gives this a feeling that this is on top, okay, and the glass below it is on the bottom. So we have a sense of depth by using value, darks and lights. Okay. Here's another example of how value gives us a feeling of texture, that the surface isn't necessarily flat. Okay, so this picture of the bark, when you examine it, it's just this really intricate play of darks and lights. And this gives us the illusion that it's a very rough surface. The one below it has less darks and lights, less values, and it gives a feeling that some of those shapes are recessed, they go back. They're not entirely flat, but some of them are flat compared to the one above it. Okay, so there's limited values, makes it feel less textured. Okay, so just look at these examples as examples of texture, all using value, lights and darks. Okay, so the second part of this assignment is we're going to be introducing color. And you should have on the modules, you'll find a color wheel. I also have posted this introduction, so you'll have the color wheel in that as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to be picking a single color and we're going to be adding value to it. We're going to be creating a monochromatic color scheme, meaning one color. But what we're going to do is 2 color studies. And what you're going to do is you're going to pick a color and then find its complement. So its complement is what is across on the color wheel. Okay, so you know there are primary colors and secondary colors. Our primary colors are red, blue, yellow. You cannot mix any other color to create those. So starting with the primary colors, blue, red, or yellow, depending on what you mix on the color wheel. So starting with the red, for example, if I mix a little yellow in it, I take that primary color, I get a red-orange. I put more yellow in it, I get an orange. I put even more yellow in it, and I get a yellow-orange. Okay, so anywhere on this color wheel, you look at the primaries, and then you go around it one way or the other, and it mixes with the other primary to create a secondary. So whatever is across from that color, so if you take the primary color blue, its complement is orange. It's what's directly across. You take the secondary color yellow-green, and you look across the color wheel, so red-violet is its complement. Okay, so on and so forth. And then this just demonstrates what I mean. So the complement of blue is orange. The complement of yellow is violet. red, green, so on and so forth. Okay, so color also has value, darks and lights. And what I did here is I took a red tomato, which is a primary color, and I dumped the color. And you can see that its value is actually fairly dark. So here's a value scale that you can buy in any art store. And when you look at it, it's black being number 1, the darkest, and white being number 10. That if you compare this value scale to the red value, it's actually like a number 4. It's fairly dark. And compare that to the other primary color, yellow. When you dump that color to black and white and you compare it with your value scale, it's actually closer to a 9. Okay, it's very light in the value. So keep that in mind as we're working with color. Okay, so for this project, like I said, it's going to be monochromatic. Hue is another name for color. Okay, so when you see hue, it means color. So what we're going to do for this project is we're going to pick a single color or hue, and we're going to add white to it to create a tint. We're going to add a dark gray to it to create a tone, and then we're going to add black to the hue to create a shade. So that's our palette for this class, for this project. Just these 4 values. All right, so how we're going to start is you're going to get your pencils that you were asked to purchase at the beginning of class. If you didn't go out and get them, you might want to get them now because you'll be needing them. But you should have a black pencil, a 70% gray, a 50% gray, which is going to represent your hue or your color. This will represent your tone. The black will represent your shade. And the lightest one, which is 30% gray, will represent your tint. So tint, hue, tone, and shade. Okay? And the first thing you're going to do is look at your last project, your second project, Shape 1. And you're going to look through those 8 still life drawings you did. And you're going to pick one that you're going to use for this assignment. So take a look at those. Any one, it's got to come from your still lifes. Okay? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make a real simplified design of this. It's not what you're necessarily going to be using for the final project, but you're just going to simplify it. So take a piece of marker paper and draw with your micro pens a simple little shape. Okay. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to take, excuse me, you're going to take that design template and you're going to put it over another sheet of paper, and you're going to do these thumbnails. And it's going to show that you understand this concept of how to make something feel like it has depth or space by using these devices: overlapping, change in value, perspective, and change in scale. So whatever your shape is, make it easy on yourself, make it super simple, and just do these drawings. Do a little template because it will go a lot faster. And then you can put your marker paper over it, and you can do this overlapping, change in value, change in scale, and perspective. And for perspective, if you've never done it, all you're going to do is take your ruler, draw a line, put your shape on it, find your focal point. Okay, anywhere on this line, doesn't matter where it is, you're going to create 1-point perspective. And then take your ruler and find the edges of your drawing, your design, and make it feel like it isn't flat, that it actually has an edge to it. That's what this is all about. Okay? So that would be 1-point perspective. And then for your other 4 drawings, what you're going to do is you're going to just play around with using value to create different textures. All right, so you can find this in your assignment sheet. Okay, thumbnails, create thumbnail sketches exploring your shape, overlapping, change in value, change in scale, change in perspective, and texture. Okay, so when you're done with that, you're going to put that aside, and then you're going to look at your still life, and you're going to have to enlarge your drawing to fit into this template. You can find this template in under the assignment, and it's 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. So it's bigger than the first 2 assignments. Okay, so once you create this box, then you're going to enlarge your original thumbnail, okay, your original still life. Let's go back to that. Sorry, kind of skipping around here. Okay, I went past it. So you're going to take your still life, took this drawing up here, this top one, okay, and just started drawing the shapes. Now, you don't have to worry about little pieces on this one compared to the last one. It's a different printing process. So for now, keep that in mind. You can get much more intricate. What we're going to be doing when we print these is we're going to be layering the shapes. So we'll print it once with the background, okay? Let that dry. Then we're going to maybe print one of the values, maybe the hue next, okay? Let that dry. And then we'll print the tone, let that dry, then print the shade. So you're going to be printing 4 times. Okay, and it will become a lot clearer as we move along, but that's why the way we're doing this is going to be different. So we're going to be layering the shapes. So they can be very intricate, like this one shows. So make yourself a design template to size. Make sure that your drawing this time goes off the edge. You can see I'm bleeding the design off the edge. And you want to do it all 3 edges, maybe just have one area that's open like this one shows. Okay? And then next, you're going to take your 4 grayscale pencils and you're going to do 2 drawings. So remember, we're only working with 4 values. So you're going to do 2 grayscale studies. So the first time we did it, I put the shade in the background. This is the tone in the here, and then there's the hue, which is the one that's kind of in the middle between the tint and the tone. So there's the hue, and then the tone is the shape. Tint, excuse me, is the lightest one. Okay, and then you're going to look at that, and you're going to make a second one, and you're just going to move over the values around. And so this one, I put the shade in the middle here, and then the tone is on the background and inside some of this here, and the tint is in the same place. It's on the top. Okay, so I've done 2 value studies, and looking at them, I decided the one on the right works so much better than the one on the left. So this is the one I'm going to use to create my color studies. So next you're going to take that value study, and like I showed you with the tomato and the pear, okay, you know how color has value as well. So what you're going to do is give yourself a little value study. You just need to grab 1 pencil. In this example, the hue or the green, this is the pencil right here. And then for the shade, all I did was take the green and I layered a little bit of the black pencil over it. And then for the hue, the tone, I took the pencil, the hue, and put my 70% gray on top of that. So that's how colored pencils work. You kind of have to layer it. all right? But give yourself this value study because it's going to help as you work, okay? And then last, for the tint, all I did is take my pencil and I didn't press as hard, so it appears lighter in the drawing. But that will represent my tint. So tint, hue, tone, and shade. So once you get done with that, and you're going to be starting with the original color, whatever your object is. In this case, it was artichoke, okay, a dried up artichoke. So that was the original color, was a green. So on the color wheel, I looked for its complement, which would be red. That's what is across from green on the color wheel. So then my next color study is going to be red. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a little value study with color. And your hue is just whatever color pencil you pick, okay? Added the 70% gray to make my tone. Added the black with the red to make my shade. And then just didn't press as hard for my tint, okay? So that's what you're going to be doing, all right? What I'd like you to do is by a week from today, at the beginning of class, I'd like to see all this done. Okay, I know you guys have a quiz on Thursday, so I'm not going to bug you too much about getting that done. What you should get done by the end of class today, you should get these thumbnails all done, all 8 thumbnails. Do them real quick. They don't need to be perfect. I don't need to see these. These are going to go in your process book, but I want you to get them done first, okay? So after you get those done, then you're going to do your design template. You're going to figure it out, do your grayscales, and then do your color studies, okay? All right, that's the first part, and then next week we'll get into the second part. But I do want to show you some professional artwork that you might find interesting, and at the end I have some student work of this project. So this particular artist uses the same process that we do, the silk screening, and with a very limited palette. So it's monochromatic, it's one color, different values. So they have a shade and they have a tone, and then they're using the white of the paper. That's all there is to this. So it's really just 2 inks on white paper. Okay, here's another example. It looks like the paper's more of a warm, like a yellow, but this is actually just 2 inks. It's a shade and it's some kind of tone. That's it, just 2. But the way that they have designed this, it just has such a feeling of depth. It doesn't feel flat. Okay, here's another example. This is just 2 values. Okay, very simple. But where they've placed the values give this a feeling that it's going back in space. It has some sort of form to it. It also has some sort of texture. It doesn't feel flat. It feels that it definitely goes back in space. And here there's only 2 values. They're using the white of the paper for the lightest areas. They're using a shade and then this tone right in here. Okay. Here's another one, a little more complex. There's probably about 4 values in here, but it's the same thing. It's real limited. It's broken up into shapes, okay, but very successful. Same thing here. This one I think has 3 inks. There's the background, 1, 2, 3, and then they use the white of the paper for the highlights. Okay? Pretty interesting what you can do with a real limited monochromatic palette. All right, so this is student work. And what you're going to be doing when you're done with your prints, you're going to do 8 prints. And then you're going to be taking your best 4 prints and you're going to put them together to create a design. So that's what you're looking at. So this student actually, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, this was their print. And if you look at this, this is 4 values. They've got their shade in the background. This is their hue, okay? Their tone, and their tint is the lightest one. But this is very successful, very well done. And you get such a great feeling of depth in this. Okay, here's another one where a student, they had a pine cone, and so they used the pine cone needles and zoomed in on them for one of their drawings. And so they used that for this project. And there's a really nice sense of depth in that. Okay, here's another one that has good sense of depth, although I would say that registration could have been better. You can see this is their tint, and the tint's kind of coming through here. So at any rate, I will talk about registration later, but I like to show this one just because I think they did a nice job of showing texture and depth on the surface. Okay, this is another one that's very successful. I just love it. This student did just a remarkable job with the mixing of their inks, and they've got a really nice range of shade, tone, hue, and tint. Okay, very successful. Okay, here's the artichoke printed up. Okay, and then here's a much simpler design. You don't have to be as complex as these. Okay, you can do something simple, but just make sure that when you're working on your inks, that there's a real division in the values. Okay, like the pink here is maybe a little too, it's too stark in comparison to the others. I would have liked to have seen the tone a little darker. But again, you can do something really simple. You don't have to be complex. All right, and then this last example, here's a student that did an artichoke. I think they did a decent job. One thing that I would like to have seen the student do is maybe bring the design off another corner. I think it would have made it much more interesting. So they could have left this one area blank, but if they had brought this design all the way here, I think you would have liked the results better. Very similar to how this student did it. Okay, makes a much more interesting final design. So that's pretty much it, students. We will talk again on Thursday.